A business, like life itself, is a tapestry that's woven over time. The most beautiful ones are often works that span generations, with every new one building on the successes of its predecessors. Join us in conversation with local business leaders as we explore just what it takes to craft a lasting legacy. Hello and welcome to this installment of the Opus Legacy Roundtable series, where we discuss issues related to continuity and legacy planning. This is brought to you in partnership with Opus by Prudential, a dedicated offering designed to meet your wealth management and legacy planning needs. I'm your host, Melissa Hyak, and with me today is Ms. Lam Tze Tze, Executive Director of Electroacoustic Systems, or EAS, a Singapore company that's regarded in the region as a pioneer for state-of-the-art multimedia systems integration. Now, Tze's father, Mr. Lam Tong Loy, founded the business in 1982. Over the years, the company has continued to widen its offerings of professional AV solutions, expand its markets, and strike up new strategic partnerships. In 2017, the year the company turned 35, Tze, who had been living abroad for some 20 years, returned to join the family business. So Tze, I'm wondering, your return to Singapore to join a family business in a milestone year, is it a coincidence or is it, an activation of some kind of succession planning plan?
It was pure coincidence. It wasn't planned. It just so happened that it felt at that point it was the right time to come back. And I think it was the right time to come back.
Why was it the right time?
From a personal level, I think I was ready to come back. And I think I've experienced quite a bit overseas, from studying my education all the way to working. And working for someone else is an education in itself as well. And I think I've learned a lot and I'm very grateful for that. And at that point, it felt like the right time to return to Singapore, partly because I suppose I'm the only child and my parents are getting a little bit older. And I think the question started from, when are you coming back, to when do you think you'll come back, to I think you should really start thinking about coming back. So it kind of evolved around like that, yes.
I suppose you knew right from fairly young age that eventually you would rejoin or join a family business. Right. When I looked at, again, your past work experiences, they were in rather diverse sort of industries. How did you make your career choices before coming back to, you didn't seem to have a very direct path to running, to the sort of things that you need to be running your own business?
I think first and foremost, to be fair to my parents, they never said that I had to come back to take over. It was more of I think you have to decide what you want on your own. And because I think my dad was similar in that sense. He's the youngest of many siblings. We have a very large family. And even then, my grandfather didn't tell him that you have to come back. So it was, something that he had to decide on his own as well, whether it was for him or whether it was not.
Well, I thought it was interesting that you had the option, because just now you were saying that your dad was actually quite prepared even for you to not join the family business. But on your part, your considerations, even though your dad said, no problem, do what you want with your life. But there's also, I suppose, as the only child, was there that internal pressure that you must carry on the family legacy in the business?
If I said no, I'd be lying, right? I think it's, I think being the only child, and I'm quite close to my parents. And I have a lot of friends actually who has family businesses as well. And I think all of us, to a certain extent, would feel a bit of that pressure, whether or not to come back to help. I think especially a lot of us will see how our family members work within the family. And for my parents, for me, it's just my parents, right? Seeing how they work within the company, the kind of sacrifices and effort they have to put in. And you feel that perhaps it's something that is worth keeping and expanding and growing. Because it's not just a business, it's also it's a passion and it's something that you've built. And you want to bring that forward and move on from that as well.
Being a woman in a predominantly male sort of industry, as well as being the daughter of the owners of the company, did you find it harder to gain the recognition of clients and staff for your performance? Because there'll always be perhaps that idea that, of course she's the daughter, so therefore this and that. And then for clients, sometimes it's like, she's a woman. Does she know anything about these? Because of the kind of industry you're in.
I've never really thought about this in the sense of whether they would think whether I'm up for the job or whether I can do it. But of course, I think most would think, oh, she's the boss's daughter, and I'm supposed the connotations like, oh, the boss's daughter, would come up. And, will she take it seriously, or is she doing it for fun? And that's what happens to a lot of next generation, right? I think they have to deal with this sort of questions. I think the important thing is not to think about that question that way, but to just do it and do what you think is right. And even when I was working with someone else, that's how I behaved as well.
You obviously still work very closely with your father, and you discuss how to run the company on a day-to-day basis, as well as the future roadmap, right? In which areas would you say, or which aspects of the work do you find you have the widest gap in approach, or the most intense disagreements with your father?
I don't have very intense disagreements with him, but I think things where I may disagree are maybe in how certain messages come across. For example, I think, for our company, we are coming up to 40 years next year. How we presented ourselves has always been on a more corporate, serious level. And when I told my dad, I think we should have social media accounts. And he said, well, what are you going to put on that? But we are not a consumer business, where it's different. I said, yes, but I think we need to take a different angle. The truth is, nowadays, you can be a very established company, very well known within your industry, word of mouth, and, the reputation is there. But if you're not Googleable, for example, or not on certain social media platforms, the younger generation may not know what the company has done, who you are, and all that. And it's a different way, a different channel to reach out to people who may not have known us. And it is also part of, I think, the kind of new hiring process, so to speak. I think for people to understand us from an informal way, as opposed to the most of the time we're more formal. But I don't think we have had very intense disagreements. But I think the approach might be a little bit different. That's probably the main difference.
That's quite true. I suppose for the earlier generations of business leaders, they focus on the product alone. And they feel that, okay, if my product's good, word of mouth, it'll speak for itself. Whereas we are operating in a very different world now when marketing, branding, take, I think, almost equal importance for any business. So have you and your father discussed how your role might evolve within the company, and perhaps the responsibility, right, and the empowerment that you have over the next few years? Is there a hard target of when you might take over the company completely?
There's no hard target. I think from my perspective, I think for as long as he wants to work, I think he should. Because I think everyone has their way of contributing, just like even our staff. I think they have contributed in different ways. They have they're good at different things, and if they can't do a certain job now, then we will try to rework whatever they're doing and see what else they can do. The important thing is we value talent, and we value the loyalty and sincerity. So we have to make sure that staff who have been with us for many years, for example, we'll see what we can do to allow them to continue working. So I think the same can be said for my dad. I don't think I want him to retire so early. At no point giving him another title for the sake of that. And I think as long as he wants to be active, I think he should be active. And now that everyone is living longer lives as well, right? I read recently the report, everyone is living such longer lives now. It's good if you're able to contribute. Why not? So
what would you say is the most valuable thing you learned from your father as well as your mother, working with them at EAS? So
it's very important that the credibility, integrity within a company is important. I mean, even when we try to inculcate these cultures in our business as well. I think starting from my grandfather, telling my dad about how you do businesses, and that's the foundation of businesses, right? I think making sure that the credibility and integrity of the company is there, so that you form a solid network, that everyone is able to trust you, and that you have something solid to go back to. And I think you have to be prepared to make such sacrifices in terms of your time and how you want to allocate your time and effort as well. And now, of course, with COVID, all the more it's become important. Like, how do you want to allocate your time and energy? Because there's only a finite amount of time, given that there's COVID. You never know when there could be another lockdown or there could be other issues or whatsoever. So you really need to focus and make the right choices.
You said that one of the challenges for family businesses would be to continue the legacy, right? And to take it to greater heights, right? So for EAS, what is your vision of this greater heights? What does it look like?
I think at the current moment, I think it's really because COVID is happening. The important thing is to make sure that the company and the businesses sail through, safely and secure. And it's best to be prudent, right? You make sure that things are going to work well, everything will be fine. And that's being the responsible part of it, trying to make sure everything will be safe, and that's how it works. The other part would be to look for new avenues of growth and all that. So we are actually identifying new business areas for growth and all that, but not something that we can share at the moment.
Not just even a little bit?
No.
Okay. Now let's look at your father's legacy, right? I think it's safe to say that for a lot of people, outsiders especially, they'll say, Mr. Lam Tong Loy, right? His legacy, EAS, right? So have you ever thought about, creating your own? Seeing as how, yes, you will be continuing his legacy, but to have something that you can say is totally my own legacy.
I think I mentioned earlier as well that one of the things that I thought about doing was to start my own business as well. And I think coming back, it probably gives me a platform to actually look into other areas. So definitely I'm looking at, other areas of the business that we're looking to grow and looking to expand. The other part, of course, is to look at how we can inculcate maybe certain new cultures and new thoughts and ideas into this. And so it's a little bit of, I suppose, extension of maybe my grandfather's ideas from the past and then my father's, and to mine is to maintain that harmony. But also we're also looking at harmony not just in terms of day-to-day interaction with people, but also harmony with maybe nature as well, right? So another part that I'm looking into now is sustainability, and that's where I feel we all have to do our part, whether it's a small thing or everything will count towards that. And I think that's how we hope to be able to maybe do something about this.
It got me thinking, right, about succession and transition of power, etc. So, in ancient China, those emperors who have reigned for a really long time, and they have the heir apparents, right, the 太子 or something. Oftentimes what they do is the two popular modus operandi. One would be, they sweep off all the obstacles. They get rid of, all the people standing in the way of the heir apparent, right, for the heir apparent. Then there are others, especially those I think who have been running, say, the country, the nation for a long time. What they do is they kind of leave things be, because there are a lot of things that are difficult for them to touch and do, but they really want to do, but it's like really perhaps controversial. They leave it to the heir apparent to be the disruptor. So do you see any of that happening in your company with your father in his approach?
We've always taken a more harmonious approach when it comes to managing the company. And our staff have been with us for a long time, and we value that loyalty and that sincerity that they have with us. And I think as long as they want to contribute, there will always be a space for them, a position for them in the company. It's how they want to develop themselves as well. But for us, because of what I've learned in the past and I think experiences that my dad had and because of our company structure, we find a way that we can actually transition in a very smooth way.
Come 2022, EAS will be 40 years old. It's another milestone year. So are we looking at any special plans, any big announcements to make?
We have plans, but we can't make any announcements yet. It's not yet 2022. We are celebrating our 39th birthday on the 16th of December. So it's still, I have 11 months to think about the 40th. But hopefully by then, COVID restrictions would have lifted, and maybe we can have another gathering, because we always used to have, Christmas and Chinese New Year gatherings for, all our staff. And we haven't been able to do that. And even for our overseas staff, we haven't seen them for a long time. And, there's only so much you can do over a conference call, and, having the opportunity to meet face to face is always very important. So hopefully by next year, we can have a party, with all our friends and our staff. But fingers crossed.
Thank you for your time and
Thank
wish
you.
you a happy 39th anniversary at
Thank you.
EAS in advance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Had a great
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.